Are you really helping your students and employees succeed in building a purposeful life? Or are you unintentionally sabotaging them from being good and doing good to those around them? I don't think any of us hope we're giving people who depend on us the wrong tools, or worse yet, dangerous tools. We want them to get better and become more responsible. We want them to be people who make positive change happen. So what do we do with tools like AI? Something that has equal measures helpfulness and hazard. It's too easy to vilify technology, so we end up doing ridiculous things like getting on social media to denounce social media, or writing a short blog post decrying our inability to read long passages of text. And do any of these questions have good answers? We built our classrooms and training programs on the idea that there's a right answer, a best practice. But what if it's more complex than that? What if the reality demands nuance, experimentation, and ongoing adaptation instead of one-size-fits-all solutions? I don't pretend to have the answers, far from it. But these are the questions nagging at many of us, and that's why this podcast exists, to give space to those concerns while searching for practical ways forward in higher education and business. I'm Kenny Embry, PhD, a communication professor who's been teaching for about 20 years, long enough to remember a time before microwave ovens and the VHS versus Betamax battle. My insight is finite, but I've never seen anything like AI. And to make my own bias clear, I am a cheerleader for the technology. Let me say that again. AI is something that makes me optimistic. It is a tool that customizes at scale. Instead of making an entire class deal with a handful of students' problems, I can now ask my kids having problems to tailor AI to help them where they struggle. It's individual tutoring for the entire class. I love how individual it gets. In fact, this very script is an example. I outlined the ideas and jotted down the main points, then gave Grok my thoughts. It helped me develop a fully formed first draft. I didn't like that first draft. It was generic and missed my personal perspective, but as we worked on the wording and ideas together, it became something I thought was better than what I could have written alone. Let me be clear. It's a product of collaboration, much like the best things that emerge from a discussion with my students. But that benefit comes with a cost. It's the tension of any collaboration. The tension hit hard when my wife and I got a used Tesla. Statistically speaking, it's the safest car I've ever owned. Research shows that current self-driving is between 7 and 9 times safer than I am alone. It makes sense. The car has 9 cameras aimed in all directions, and I have 2 cameras aimed forward with a series of mirrors that help, but can't replace having more eyes. It can make better decisions because it has more data to pull from. But don't tell that to my wife. She doesn't like full self-driving because the car makes different decisions than she would. It's foreign because she's used to being in control. I get it. When I'm in the car, I'm supposed to be the master. It's the servant. But sometimes that distinction gets a little fuzzy. I set the destination, and I can override anytime I want to. But small choices like which lane to be in don't matter much, so I let it decide. Most of the time, the car's decisions are better than mine, but not always. The big question at the end, did we arrive safely and on time? That's the razor-edge tension we're living with right now, in classrooms, training sessions, and daily business decisions. And that tension is exactly what drives this series. In higher education and business alike, letting AI dominate the process risks eroding the very struggle that creates skills and the character to be good and to do good. The stakes feel higher than any tech shift before. Let's lean into the skeptical side just for a moment. The growing unease many educators and business leaders feel, grounded in what's actually happening in classrooms, training programs, and workplaces since ChatGPT exploded. These aren't hypotheticals. They're patterns showing up semester after semester and quarter after quarter. And in the rush of excitement, these concerns can get pushed aside. Let's start with one of the most immediate issues. AI lowers the friction for powerful assistance. Before, drafting ideas, reports, or arguments meant wrestling with blank pages, false starts, dead ends, the messy work that forces growth. Now tools spit out strong, coherent starting points in seconds. Online discussion boards or team brainstorming sessions, AI generates thoughtful-looking contributions in moments. The tension here isn't that learners or employees are malicious. Many use it to brainstorm or push past blocks, but the impact is the same. It often bypasses the grinding, iterative thinking that builds critical literacy, resilience, and independent decision-making. We're seeing outputs improve, but are we seeing thinkers and leaders improve? That leads to another pattern I've noticed and heard from colleagues across higher ed and business training contexts. Most undergrads or new hires report using AI on tasks in some capacity. Even strong performers, and maybe especially strong performers, in advanced work or professional reports, patterns emerge. Phrasing that's too polished, references that feel off, or depth that doesn't match prior performance. Spotting heavy reliance isn't clear-cut anymore. It turns mentoring and management into constant second-guessing, eroding trust, and shifting focus from development to monitoring. People often bring up the calculator analogy here. We feared it would kill math skills, but we adapted. Fair point, we did. But let's push on that a bit. AI operates on a different scale. Calculators handle raw computation. AI, on the other hand, simulates what educators call higher-order skills. If you've been in a classroom or a corporate training session in the last 20 years, you've probably heard of Bloom's taxonomy. It's a framework that organizes learning from the most basic skills, like simply remembering a fact, up to the most complex, like analyzing a situation or creating an original idea. Now, let me be clear, I'm not a fan of Bloom's taxonomy. I think it's an outdated framework that is unnecessarily complex and turns the fluid, messy process of learning into a bureaucratic checklist. Anytime we have to pull out a thesaurus so we can find synonyms to write the perfectly worded outcome, I wonder if it's useful or simply political pedagogy. But for a moment, let's use its language. AI can now generate outstanding final products that appear to demonstrate analysis, evaluation, and creation, the highest tiers of Bloom's. And that's the rub. Large language models produce outstanding products. How do we assess the process which make good products possible? We're not talking about students who use a calculator to get a right number. We're talking about systems that bypass the very intellectual struggle that forges the skills in the first place. That's not just convenient. It's a foundational threat to thinking well. And that brings me to the deepest worry. Giving us the illusion of being good without being good. Like parents who set firm guardrails so kids don't binge on candy all day. We need structures to keep AI as an assistant and not a replacement, in classrooms and corporate training alike. Without them, learners and employees sidestep the repetitive, unglamorous process that builds character and judgment, the very traits that let us be good and do good in the world. The real question isn't how to ban the tool. It's what skills are non-negotiably human and what skills are best delegated to the machine. Think of it this way. I can hire an accountant to do my taxes so I don't need to learn tax law. That is delegating a complex, optimizing task. But what I can't delegate is the human judgment about my financial future or the critical decision of which risks I'm willing to take. The accountant is the servant for a specific process, but I remain the master of my financial life. In education and business, AI can crush tasks like summarizing data, structuring a first draft, or optimizing a supply chain. It's an incredible accountant for a dozen different fields. But the iterative grind that builds mastery, the frustrating process of testing an idea, having it fail, rethinking the assumptions, and trying again, that process is what forges the human capacity to learn, adapt, and lead. If we skip the struggle, we might get a good product, but we forfeit the strength of judgment needed for the next unpredictable challenge. By the way, I love that AI allows us to fail faster and figure out problems. That is infinitely useful. We can fail in a chat screen 1,000 times before we start taking actual financial actions. However, it's this distinction that brings us to the deepest danger. AI can't choose our values for us. More accurately, if we surrender our mastery and let the AI define the optimal path, we risk passively adopting the values, the ethical frameworks, the implicit choices programmed into the algorithm by its creators, not the values we choose to live and lead by. We are outsourcing the very struggle that forces us to clarify what it means to be good and to do good. We let good be defined by people who may not be. That is the profound trade-off we face. This series focuses on both the skeptical and optimistic lenses, and it ties directly to why I named it Practical AI Wisdom. Practical, because we'll focus on actionable ways to teach and train better, not just philosophy, but concrete strategies and tools of AI and other tech tools that help us think faster, clearer, and more effectively in every part of our work. AI for the main tool we're examining, and wisdom for the irreplaceable human part, the judgment that lets us learn, adapt, and change when we truly understand something deeper. AI accelerates thinking, but decisions and growth still rest with us. Thanks for listening to Practical AI Wisdom. If you're grappling with AI in the classroom, training room, or boardroom, and who isn't these days, subscribe for the best wisdom I can find. Next up, concrete methods that turn AI into a genuine ally for critical thinking and decision-making. Until then, be good and do good.